They only have power over you for as long as you care. That's the quiet law most people never understand. The moment you stop seeking their approval, their attention, their validation, the entire illusion collapses. The manipulator loses his leverage. The gossip loses her weapon. The world that once demanded your obedience suddenly starts to tremble, because indifference is the one thing they can't control. You see, when you no longer react, they no longer rule. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He studied the way power moves, how it breathes through people's insecurities, how it feeds on the need to be liked. Every tyrant, every schemer, every whisperer in the dark, they all rely on one simple truth. People crave acceptance more than they crave freedom. If you can make someone desperate for your approval, you don't need chains or weapons. You've already conquered their soul. But here's the thing, they never tell you that indifference is rebellion. That silence, when used correctly, is a weapon sharper than any sword. You've been taught that caring is noble, that empathy is strength, and sometimes it is. But there's a kind of caring that destroys you, a kind that turns your emotions into strings for others to pull. The world feeds on that version of you, the reactive one, the pleading one, the one who bends just to be seen as good. The people who manipulate you don't want your love, they want your reaction. Every sigh, every anxious text, every desperate attempt to explain yourself feeds them. It tells them you're still playing the game. It tells them you still care. That's why indifference terrifies them. When you stop caring, they can no longer measure themselves through your eyes. They can no longer provoke you to validate their own importance. Your silence becomes a mirror that forces them to see who they really are, and that's the one thing they can't stand. Think about the last time someone tried to guilt you into submission. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't threaten you. They just made you feel responsible for their emotion. That's emotional leverage, one of Machiavelli's favorite weapons. He who controls perception, he wrote, controls reality. The modern version is simple. If I can make you believe that your peace depends on my happiness, I own you, and you'll exhaust yourself trying to fix me. That's how most people lose their freedom, not by force, but by guilt, by caring too much about what others think, by mistaking approval for love and fear for loyalty. The game is subtle. They'll praise your kindness while quietly exploiting it. They'll say you're so understanding as they drain your energy. They'll call you the only one who gets them right before blaming you for their pain. And every time you try to pull away, they'll say you're cold, selfish, heartless. But Machiavelli would tell you, being feared for your detachment is better than being destroyed for your compassion. He never meant fear in the childish sense. He meant respect born from unpredictability. When people can't read you, they can't manipulate you. When they can't predict your emotions, they stop trying to control them. Your stillness confuses them. Your lack of reaction becomes your armor. Here's the paradox. The more you care, the less they value you. The less you care, the more they chase. It's not because they suddenly see your worth. It's because they feel their power slipping. You became unpredictable. You broke the pattern. They can't feed on indifference. It starves their ego. So they panic. They'll apologize. They'll reminisce. They'll try to pull you back into the drama. But they don't miss you. They miss the control they had over you. Let's be honest. Most of what we call relationships are power exchanges disguised as love. Friendships, family, even romance, they all orbit around who needs who more. The balance shifts with every act of care, every favor, every sacrifice. People remember who bent first, and once they see that you will always bend, they stop treating you as an equal. That's the cruel truth. Machiavelli said, men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. Harsh, yes, but not cynical, realistic. He wasn't saying people are evil. He was saying people act according to their interest. If their interest aligns with yours, they appear loyal. When it doesn't, they vanish. And if you've built your identity around being needed, that vanishing act feels like death. You start chasing them, explaining yourself, begging for clarity. But every word you speak tells them they still control the script. So stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop performing empathy for people who only understand power. Detach not because you hate them, but because you love your peace more than their chaos. Indifference isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the moment you realize that your worth doesn't increase by overextending yourself. You're not a resource, you're not a comfort object, you're a force. When you stop caring, you see how small their games really were. You see that the threats, the guilt trips, the silent treatments were just smoke screens for insecurity. People manipulate because they're afraid you'll leave. Afraid you'll see through them. Afraid you'll stop playing the part they need you to play. The moment you do, they panic because they no longer know who they are without the power they held over you. There's something hauntingly beautiful about emotional detachment when it's done right. It's not bitterness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that not everything deserves a reaction. Not every invitation to chaos deserves your attendance. You become selective with your energy. You stop explaining your silence. You let people interpret it however they want, because the truth is your peace doesn't need their understanding. You start moving differently. You stop chasing closure. You stop trying to prove your goodness. You realize that some people need you to care so they can keep feeling superior. When you withdraw that attention, they lose their mirror. They no longer know who the villain or victim is, so they scramble to reframe the story. They'll rewrite history, call you cold, distant, changed. And you'll smile because for the first time they're right, you have changed. The art of not caring isn't about apathy, it's about focus. When you stop caring about the noise, you start caring about your purpose. When you stop obsessing over being understood, you start understanding yourself. The detachment frees you to see patterns, to notice how much of your suffering came from voluntary submission, kneeling to opinions, begging for validation, sacrificing peace for proximity. Machiavelli would have admired that transformation, the moment the subject becomes the ruler, not by rebellion, but by withdrawal. The prince doesn't announce his independence, he simply stops reacting to the court's gossip. Power doesn't roar, it radiates. And indifference is the quietest, most radiant form of power there is. You'll start to feel it too. The first few days of detachment are brutal. The silence feels heavy. The urge to explain yourself, to defend your choice, burns inside you. That's the old self dying, the self addicted to reaction. Don't resist the discomfort. Let it burn. On the other side of that fire is freedom. And then something strange happens. The same people who once dismissed you start circling back. The ones who ignored your calls start testing the waters again. They'll say they just want to check in. They'll test your emotional temperature. What they're really doing is looking for cracks in your indifference. They're hoping the old version of you, the reactive, caring, accommodating version, still exists. But if you stay calm, if you stay grounded, they'll feel it immediately. The power dynamic has shifted. They'll start trying harder. Their messages will grow longer, more emotional. They'll use nostalgia, guilt, even compliments as bait. They'll say, "You've changed," like it's an accusation, but you'll know it's proof of evolution. Because when you stop caring, you stop being predictable. And when you're no longer predictable, you become powerful. They'll say you're detached, but what they really mean is they can't use you anymore. Because every manipulator depends on one thing: access. Access to your emotions, to your time, to your need for resolution. When you cut that access, you cut the cord that feeds their control. They'll call you cold, but what they feel is starvation. The attention that once kept them fed has vanished, and now they're left with their own emptiness echoing back at them. And this is where you finally understand what Machiavelli meant by optics of power. Power doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't have to. It's the quiet confidence that unsettles those who once assumed they could read you. You become an enigma, and that drives them insane. They crave clarity, but your indifference gives them none. Every unanswered message becomes a riddle. Every calm smile becomes a threat. Because people who thrive on chaos can't stand stillness, it forces them to confront the futility of their games. You begin to see through people like glass. The words they use, the gestures they make, suddenly they're transparent. You can tell when someone is giving you affection out of sincerity or strategy. You can sense when someone's apology is meant to heal or to regain control. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what enlightenment feels like. Not comfort, but clarity so sharp it cuts. The hardest part isn't detaching from others, it's detaching from the version of yourself that needed their approval. That version was built on survival. The child who wanted to be seen, the friend who feared abandonment, the lover who mistook being needed for being loved. You'll grieve that person because they were trying their best, but eventually you'll realize they were never weak. They were just untrained in the art of emotional power. They didn't know that caring too much in the wrong direction turns compassion into captivity. So you learn restraint, you learn to care strategically. You care without attachment, you give without expectation. You love without losing yourself in the process. That's the Machiavellian form of emotional intelligence, not cruelty, but control. Not the suppression of feeling, but the mastery of it. Because whoever controls their emotions controls the battlefield. And every relationship, every negotiation, every conversation is a battlefield. Some people fight with logic, others with charm. The clever ones fight with silence. When you don't react, people are forced to reveal their true intention. Silence accelerates truth. It exposes desperation. Watch closely. Those who respected you only when you were compliant will unravel when faced with your calm detachment. They'll try anger first, then pity, then nostalgia. It's a full psychological performance, and you'll see every act unfold. But you won't need to play anymore, because once you've seen behind the curtain, the show loses its magic. You won't crave applause. You won't chase reconciliation. You'll simply observe. That's when your power solidifies, not in control over others, but in control over yourself. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should be both fox and lion, cunning enough to detect traps, strong enough to scare away wolves. Indifference, when mastered, makes you both. There's a peculiar peace that comes with it. You no longer interpret silence as rejection. You no longer see distance as punishment. You start valuing solitude not as absence, but as refinement. In solitude, your thoughts stop echoing with other people's voices. You hear your own again, unfiltered, honest, dangerous. The kind of voice the world tries to silence because it doesn't obey. And when you act from that place, people feel it. You don't even have to. Your presence alone shifts the air. It's not arrogance, it's composure. You walk into a room, and those who once underestimated you feel something different, an invisible pressure, the weight of someone who no longer needs approval to exist. That's the rarest power of all, to be untouchable without being unkind, to be distant without being disconnected. The people who once played games will sense it first. Their instincts will scream that something has changed. They'll start overcompensating, trying to reestablish old dynamics, but the old version of you doesn't live here anymore. You don't rise to the bait, you don't defend, you don't explain. You simply understand, and understanding replaces reaction. That's the quiet revolution inside you. Soon you'll notice how much time you've reclaimed, how much energy used to be wasted on decoding mixed signals, managing other people's emotions, trying to read intentions that were never pure. Now that energy flows inward. You invest it into mastery, creation, purpose. You move in silence, and the results start speaking for you. That's when the panic truly sets in, not because they miss you, but because they realize they can't reach you. You've become what Machiavelli admired most, self-sufficient. A person who no longer depends on others for validation becomes politically and psychologically unconquerable. Empires fall, alliances shift, affection fades. But a mind that's free from emotional dependence cannot be ruled. The world's noise might surround you, but it no longer enters you. That's the liberation most people spend their entire lives avoiding, because freedom, real freedom, terrifies them. When you stop caring, you stop chasing fairness. You stop expecting people to act with the same sincerity you offer. You see the world as it is, not as you wish it to. That realism doesn't make you bitter, it makes you strategic. You stop fighting unwinnable wars. You stop trying to change people who have no interest in growth. You stop seeking closure from those who profit from your confusion. You realize peace isn't something others can grant you. It's something you claim by walking away. And yet there's irony here. The moment you detach is the moment people call you mysterious, attractive, powerful. The same silence that once felt like loss now radiates confidence. Why? Because mystery is power. Human beings are drawn to what they can't fully understand. When you reveal everything, they lose interest. When you hold something back, they lean in. That's not manipulation, it's magnetism born from restraint. The more you center yourself, the more the external world scrambles for your attention. It's like gravity reverses. The same people who once ignored you suddenly compete for your recognition. The same ones who dismissed you now analyze every move. You'll see the shift in their tone, their posture, their sudden politeness, but you'll also see through it. You'll know it's not respect for you, it's fear of losing access to your calm. Your peace becomes their addiction because it reflects everything they lack. And that's when the final test appears, the temptation to use your newfound power for revenge. To make them feel what you once felt, to flip the roles and feed on their confusion. But Machiavelli would warn you here, that's how you lose mastery. The moment you need them to suffer to feel powerful, you're chained again. True dominance isn't revenge, it's irrelevance. The highest form of control is not caring whether they understand what they lost. You'll feel the urge, of course. You'll imagine the confrontations, the perfect comebacks, the scenes where they finally realize your worth, but you won't act on them. Because you'll realize that silence already said everything. Detachment doesn't scream, it whispers truths so devastating they echo in the minds of those who once underestimated you. That's your revenge, peace so profound it unsettles the people who built their identity on disturbing it. From there, your life takes on a different rhythm. You start operating on a quieter frequency. You notice the beauty in being underestimated because it allows you to move undetected. You become strategic in your relationships, not manipulative but intentional. You no longer chase chemistry, you assess alignment. You no longer seek validation, you measure consistency. You no longer pour into others who show no capacity to hold what you give. And slowly you realize something hauntingly simple. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifferent. Hate still binds you. It still consumes energy, attention, reaction. Indifference sets you free. It's the emotional zero point from which power, clarity, and peace all emerge. You begin to move through life like water, unbothered by obstacles, adapting without losing shape. The chaos of others no longer pulls you in, it merely passes around you. That's what makes people panic. They realize they can't reach you with the old tricks. Their chaos used to be your trigger. Now it's just background noise. And in that silence, they're left alone with the one person they were always running from themselves. That's the final stage of detachment, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. You feel everything, but nothing owns you. You love deeply, but never desperately. You walk away not to punish, but to protect. And when people sense that kind of power, the kind that can't be guilted, flattered, or provoked, they either rise to meet it or retreat in fear. Either way, you win. What happens next is subtle, almost imperceptible at first. You start noticing how much quieter your mind has become. The world hasn't changed. People still gossip, demand, provoke, but your reaction has. You stop being dragged into every storm because you finally understand that not every battle is yours to fight. You watch people burn themselves out trying to prove things you no longer care to debate. And that's the secret. They can't manipulate someone who no longer needs to win. You begin to understand that control isn't about dominance. It's about composure. The loudest person in the room is almost never the most powerful one. They're just the most insecure. The real strength lies in the person who can sit in silence, unshaken, while others unravel trying to get a rise out of them. That silence is unnerving because it communicates something words never could. I'm not playing this game anymore. Machiavelli knew that perception was everything. In The Prince, he wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. People misinterpret that as cruelty. But what he meant was this: when people fear losing your respect, your time, your presence, they behave differently. That's the kind of fear he was talking about. It's not terror, it's reverence. And reverence is born from rarity. When you make yourself too available, too forgiving, too responsive, people grow numb to your value. But when you withdraw, when your attention becomes something that must be earned, suddenly they remember what it feels like to lose you. You realize that caring less isn't about detachment from life, it's about detachment from illusion. You stop expecting people to think, feel, or act the way you do. You stop negotiating your boundaries in the name of empathy. You see that kindness without self-respect is self-destruction disguised as virtue. The world doesn't reward endless giving, it exploits it. But when you begin to move with restraint, when you no longer chase understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you, that's when you cross the line between victim and strategy. You'll start seeing the beauty in distance. The silence that once felt like loneliness now feels like luxury. You wake up and realize you no longer need to check who texted, who viewed your story, who's paying attention. Because your peace no longer depends on being seen, it depends on being centered. You start pouring that attention into your work, your growth, your discipline. You realize that self-mastery is the highest form of revenge because nothing unsettles those who underestimated you more than your quiet evolution. The people who once toyed with your emotions will sense it before you ever announce it. They'll feel your absence in the smallest ways. The conversations that used to revolve around drama now end quickly because you no longer engage. You stop reacting to provocations, and your indifference becomes unbearable to them. They'll accuse you of acting superior, of being cold, of losing your humanity. But what they're really saying is, you stopped making me feel important. And this is where most people stumble. They confuse detachment with cruelty. But detachment isn't the absence of care, it's the refinement of it. It's the moment you choose peace over participation. You still care, but strategically. You care for yourself first, and for others in proportion to their reciprocity. You stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You stop performing emotional labor for those who never once asked how you were. Machiavelli would call this the transition from dependency to sovereignty. The sovereign doesn't beg to be understood. The sovereign decides what's worth engaging, what's worth ignoring, and what's worth burning down. You start to feel that power within yourself. It's quiet but undeniable. It's not arrogance, it's ownership. You finally understand that your energy is a currency and not everyone deserves a transaction. The change begins to ripple outward. Your standards shift. The people who once drained you start falling away, not because you forced them out, but because your frequency no longer accommodates their chaos. They feel the distance and mistake it for rejection, but it's simply evolution. They can't reach you because you're no longer available at the same emotional level. You've moved from reaction to observation, from desperation to discernment. And those who truly value you, they'll adjust. They'll match your calm. They'll meet you in silence, not out of fear, but respect. That's how you recognize genuine connection. It survives even when the noise stops. The ones who were there for control will fade. The ones who were there for truth will stay. That's the natural order of things once you stop chasing everyone and start attracting only what resonates with your peace. Your mind sharpens. You begin to see how society conditions you to overcare, how every system depends on emotional investment. Politics, religion, advertising, relationships, they all thrive on your attention. They all whisper, "You're incomplete without us." But once you realize that detachment dismantles their control, everything changes. You stop being a participant and become an observer. The illusion loses its hold because your indifference starves it of energy. Machiavelli would have admired that psychological rebellion. To him, power wasn't about brutality. It was about understanding the human mind so completely that you could no longer be tricked by it. He knew that those who can't control their emotions are slaves to those who can. And that's what most people never learn. Emotional control isn't repression, it's strategy. When you stop reacting, you start directing. You become the calm center in a spinning world of chaos. And the irony is, once you master that calm, the world starts chasing you again. But this time you don't chase back. You watch, you let them come to you. The same ones who used to ignore your boundaries now praise your strength. The same ones who doubted you now seek your advice. They think you became powerful overnight, but the truth is, you simply stopped giving them free access to your emotion. That's the turning point. You realize that caring less doesn't make you heartless, it makes you fearless. Fearless of rejection, of loss, of judgment. You stop begging for closure because you understand that closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. You decide to move on. You decide that peace is more important than being understood. And when you decide that, you become untouchable. There's a rare kind of freedom that comes with indifference. You stop living reactively. You stop giving explanations to people who have already made up their minds. You stop chasing fairness in a world that doesn't value it. You move with a calm that can't be provoked because you finally understand. People's actions reveal their truth far louder than their words. You no longer argue with that truth, you accept it. And acceptance, in a world addicted to control, is the ultimate act of rebellion. The moment you stop trying to fix people is the moment they realize they can no longer use your empathy as a leash. They start to panic because the dynamic has shifted. They can't guilt you, they can't lure you, they can't pull your strings anymore. You've seen the blueprint of their behavior too clearly. You've stepped out of the emotional fog they depended on to keep you compliant. And once you've tasted that clarity, you'll never go back. You start to appreciate simplicity. The calm conversation, the genuine gesture, the person who asks without expecting. Drama becomes exhausting. Chaos feels foreign. You begin to crave stability, not excitement. You realize how much of your old life was spent mistaking adrenaline for connection. That's another subtle illusion that falls apart when you stop caring, because excitement born of chaos isn't passion, it's addiction. And now when you meet people, you see them differently. You see their hunger for control, their fear of being unseen, their desperate need to be right. And instead of reacting, you simply observe. You stop trying to save everyone. You stop confusing pity for love. You stop interpreting manipulation as intensity. You no longer fall for people's potential. You respond to their pattern. That's when the world starts to open. Opportunities appear where chaos once lived. You find yourself making choices based on alignment, not approval. You stop asking, "Will they like me?" and start asking, "Will this drain me?" You stop people-pleasing and start power-keeping. Every act of restraint strengthens your foundation. Every silence becomes a statement. Machiavelli would call this psychological sovereignty, the state where no one's reaction defines your direction. You're not detached from humanity, you're detached from dependency. You engage with people out of choice, not compulsion. And because of that, your words carry more weight. Your presence commands attention without effort. People sense that your calm isn't emptiness, it's power contained. They'll panic, of course, they always do, because when you stop caring, you become immune to their currency. Guilt, gossip, shame, none of it works anymore. They'll throw every old trick at you, trying to make you care, to make you react, to make you feel small again. But you won't, because now you understand that indifference isn't the end of emotion, it's the beginning of wisdom. And now you begin to see the pattern not as cruelty, but as nature. Everything that grows detaches. The tree releases its leaves. The tide withdraws from the shore. The snake sheds its skin. Life is a series of controlled abandonments, learning what to release and when. You are not meant to carry every burden, nor to care for every storm. You are meant to master the art of letting go, again and again, until only what is real remains. That's when the silence becomes your teacher. You realize how much of your life was spent reacting, defending your name, proving your worth, chasing validation from people who couldn't even validate themselves. Now the silence teaches you what noise never could, that peace is not given, it's created. It's not the absence of conflict, it's the decision to stop engaging with it. You start walking through the world differently. Your movements are slower but sharper. You listen more than you speak. You observe patterns before you participate in them. You see that most people are trapped in cycles of emotional dependency. They feed on attention like oxygen. The moment you take that oxygen away, they suffocate in their own void. And though part of you feels pity, another part recognizes this truth. You tried to teach them peace by example, and they refused to learn. Machiavelli would say this is the natural course of power. The strong do not seek vengeance, they evolve. They let others destroy themselves through their own impulses. A ruler does not waste energy convincing his enemies, he outlasts them. You begin to do the same, not out of malice, but out of understanding. You no longer need to prove who you are to anyone. The calm in your presence is proof enough. The more detached you become, the more they crave your attention. It's paradoxical, almost cruel in its symmetry. They once mocked your sensitivity, called you overthinker, dramatic, too emotional. But now that you've withdrawn that very emotion, they call you distant, unreachable, cold. It was never about what you were. They just needed to define you in a way that made them feel superior. Now that you refuse definition, they panic. You see it everywhere. The coworker who once dismissed your ideas suddenly starts repeating your words as their own. The friend who disappeared during your silence suddenly resurfaces, pretending nothing happened. The ex who said you were too much suddenly tries to rebuild the connection now that you've stopped caring. They're not drawn by love, they're drawn by confusion. They need to prove they still have access to you, because that access once defined their importance. But you won't go back, you can't. The bridge burned quietly, not out of anger, but evolution. You no longer crave their validation because you've already validated yourself through endurance. You survived the withdrawal, the silence, the emptiness, and came out lighter. And that's something they'll never understand, how someone can lose everything external and still feel more whole inside. Here's the thing most people never realize. When you stop caring, you don't stop feeling, you start choosing. You choose what deserves your emotional investment and what doesn't. You choose where your attention goes. And attention is the purest form of power, because whatever you focus on grows. The manipulators, the guilt trippers, the emotional parasites, they all depended on your focus. Once it's gone, they fade like shadows at sunrise. And that's when true power starts to feel effortless. You don't chase, you attract. You don't argue, you demonstrate. You don't react, you redirect. The very energy that once fueled conflict now fuels creation. You pour it into your craft, your discipline, your growth. You realize that the ultimate act of rebellion in a manipulative world is self-mastery. They can control your reputation, your resources, your surroundings, but not your inner temperature. You become untouchable, not because you built walls, but because you built standards. Your silence stops being a defense, it becomes a filter. It separates what deserves your presence from what doesn't. The world notices, even if you say nothing. Your stillness becomes intimidating, your boundaries magnetic. Because deep down, everyone craves the same peace you now embody, but few are willing to lose enough to gain it. The Machiavellian principle of power is not to dominate, but to endure, to outlast chaos by mastering yourself. You realize now that the strongest people are not the loudest, nor the most ruthless. They're the ones who can remain calm in a world addicted to reaction. The ones who can sit in silence while others self-destruct trying to pull them in. That's the modern battlefield, not swords, not armies, but attention. And indifference is the only armor that never rusts. There will be moments when you're tempted to break your silence, to prove you've healed, to show them you're thriving. But that's still reaction, that's still playing. The real power move is no move at all. You simply keep living quietly, consistently, deeply. You become the proof, not the argument, because the ones who truly have moved on don't announce it. They disappear into their purpose. And when they finally realize they can no longer reach you, not through anger, guilt, or nostalgia, they'll rewrite the story. They'll paint themselves as the victim, you as the villain. Let them. You'll understand that truth no longer needs your defense. You'll understand that being misunderstood is the price of evolution, and you'll pay it gladly because peace is worth far more than being liked. Over time, your indifference begins to take on a sacred quality. It's not cynicism, it's grace. You forgive without needing to reconnect. You release without needing to announce it. You wish people well and mean it, but you don't invite them back. You let the universe handle what you no longer need to carry. Because when you've mastered the art of not caring, you stop fighting for closure, you become it. That's when you truly understand Machiavelli's hidden wisdom. He wasn't glorifying manipulation. He was describing survival in a world driven by self-interest. He saw that those who attach their peace to others' approval become servants to perception. But those who master their detachment become rulers of themselves, and therefore rulers of their reality. You start seeing how rare that level of control is. Most people live in reaction, to comments, to rumors, to opinions, to fear. You don't. You move strategically, quietly, intentionally. You speak less, but when you do, it cuts through noise like a blade, because your words now carry the weight of silence behind them. You don't waste language anymore. You don't try to convince, you don't try to convert, you simply exist as proof. And here's the paradoxical beauty of it. Once you stop caring whether people stay or go, the right ones never leave. You no longer cling. You no longer negotiate your worth through presence. You simply allow. Love, friendship, loyalty, they all start to feel lighter, cleaner, less transactional. Because when you remove need, what remains is truth. Only those who can exist beside your silence without demanding your reaction truly deserve your closeness. The panic of others will eventually fade into distance. Some will hate you for changing. Some will romanticize the old you, the one who overextended, who explained too much, who couldn't sleep without closure. But you won't resent them. You'll understand. They only knew how to love you when you were manageable. They only respected you when they could predict you. And now you're neither. The world begins to mirror your energy. Calm attracts calm. Discipline attracts opportunity. Indifference attracts clarity. You start noticing that peace isn't passive, it's magnetic. The quieter you become, the more things fall into place, because you've stopped chasing outcomes and started aligning with your own rhythm. You've stopped begging life to cooperate and started mastering how you show up. That's when life begins to cooperate on its own. And in that stillness, you find something profound. The fear that once controlled you, the fear of being unloved, unseen, misunderstood, turns into strength. You stop needing people to understand your silence because you finally understand it yourself. It's not emptiness, it's sovereignty. It's the sound of your power returning home. Machiavelli would smile at that transformation, because the truest form of strategy isn't deception, it's self-command. It's not about making others bend to your will, it's about never bending away from your truth. You've learned that the mind that governs itself needs no master, fears no exile, and begs for no recognition. You've learned that the one who can walk away without bitterness holds the world in his hand. So you walk differently now, not above others, but above the noise. You speak softly because you no longer need to shout. You forgive because you no longer need to punish. You love deeply because you no longer need to possess. You've learned the art of detachment, not as escape, but as elevation. And one day someone will ask you, how did you become so calm? You'll smile, not out of pride, but remembrance. Because the truth is, you didn't become calm. You simply stopped caring about the things that once disturbed your peace. You stopped explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped trying to make people stay who were never meant to. You stopped feeding the world your energy and started feeding your soul instead. And that's when they started panicking, because the moment you stopped caring, you became untouchable.